I was unsure if I was going to bother reviewing this record. I had this review sort of in the pipeline in the back of my head, like I could cover this thing. I wasn't really sure because unfortunately I don't like this album. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I'm seeing that many people are a huge fan of it. I don't want to be that guy that comes in or like, this is why it's bad. I'm not trying to be that guy, I don't want to be that guy, but I started developing more thoughts on the record and kind of deciding eventually that this was worth putting out there, as I think opinions like this kind of exemplify the sort of things that I look for in music, and specifically albums like this. Cutting edge hip-hop music is exciting. I want to hear new artists coming out in rap. These guys are interesting to me, but unfortunately, this is not a record that I enjoy. But, you know, I think that's fine. I do think this is worth hearing. At the end of the day, I think the bottom line of this review should be, this is worth your time. I just did not like it. But here we go. Here we go. Let's get into group therapy. This is actually exactly the kind of hip-hop that excites me. A very audibly DIY collection of love-infused bangers from a trio of pals that make songs as a form of mutual relief. All of that is extremely evident in just the music alone. I don't really know that much about the three members other than their names. We have Swim, Jada Grace, and TJ Online. If there's one thing this album definitely does have, it is personality. I feel like I just got to know these people through this album pretty well. Obviously that's, you know, kind of naive to just assume. It's just one of those albums with an essence that by default makes you feel a tiny bit closer to the people making it, which is always a valuable and special thing, and that's exactly why I would recommend it. However, I can't say that I really like this, as that would be a lie. I did not enjoy my time with Group Therapy's latest record, but I do think they have cracked a lot of sweet spots. There's plenty of moments where I hear this and I think to myself, yeah, cool. They've nailed it, the group dynamic is strong, the production is at the very least ear-grabbing, range they have is pretty hard to deny. They're very versatile artists. There's no denying that. Their collective ability to construct a catchy song is clearly there, it's clearly strong. And I found some tracks here that I do quite like, but yeah, I ultimately came away regretting the 4 or 5 listens that I did give. I was mature for my age. I reckon there's just a little while to go before I can confidently say that what they're making is very good. And the most noticeable setback for me came in the verses and the performances that I found from these 3 members. They're having loads of fun on the album, that's always a plus. That's contagious when you can feel that from a record, but it's extremely rare on this album, in my opinion, to hear a vocal performance that doesn't sound just a little bit awkward. I constantly think these guys sound like they're holding back on nearly every track here. The 3 members do have a lot of worthwhile traits that are instantly noticeable. Jada Grace, she has a really strong melodic game. It's very solid. She fully carries the track How I'm Feeling. I thought the beat on that one sounded a little bit cheesy, a little bit standard. Very easygoing track, but I think Jada elevated it to something pretty memorable. And she's really good at just naturally swapping in and out between her more technical singing style to a more deadpan and cold delivery. TJ Online has a very strong sort of untamed power in his voice that I kind of love, particularly on the opening track American Psycho, but both of these two provided quite a few moments that really sucked the life out of what I was hearing. Jada sounded really rigid to me on the track Lightspeed. I could hear what she was going for, like a more cold-blooded kind of thing, but that was a track that for me very clearly called for something bouncier, and she did not provide that. I put in the work. It's like I could just hear a great song just being gatekept by Jada's just lack of enthusiasm on the track. TJ Online, I think, struggled the most with his more like down-to-earth and personal moments, as his delivery wasn't very suited for that to me. I enjoyed him the most when he was doing more light-hearted and playful things, like on the track Nasty. I liked his like offbeat, off-kilter, frantic flow there. He was by far the funniest of the group. But for me, for the most part, these guys have so many very dull and unremarkable performances across the entire album. This is especially the problem in the case of who I personally felt was the clear weak link of the group, man. Like, not to be rude, there's a reason I did not mention Swim during that little moment, because it's painfully clear to me that Swim is the least engaging voice here. His absolute best moment on the record to me is the hook of Nasty, which is the best hook on the record, so he has got that going for him. He sharply enunciates his voice really well on that song, making for a very energetic, sticky chorus, but there's very few highlight verses from him. I liked his contributions on Hot, Help Part 1, he's got nice chemistry with Jada on Peak. Outside of that, 90% of his verses here just really drained me and fall short in my book. Swim makes for some of the most charmless and uncomfortably monotone verses this year, and that brings me to my next biggest issue with the album. As far as flows, delivery, performances, energy, I just think this album is really lacking for the amount of personality it clearly can have, or does have, or wants to have, however you want to put it. The humor and the punchlines are a huge part of this thing. They're a huge part of what communicate that character. And this album, it's at all times, very clearly, just three buds being themselves, having fun, so occasionally they attempt to have a laugh or two. Nothing wrong with that. Ray Charles even says it's on site. Don't give out my pronouns, but you can call me him. Waist is teeny tiny, but the hiney's such a threat. Pockets blue and I'm finding Nemo. Leave you in stitches, but I'm not Lilo. Look, I found myself groaning at every single punchline on this album. There was not a single moment outside of that TJ Online nasty verse that had me genuinely chuckling, smiling, laughing, listening to this. Yeah, it's likable and nice and charming to hear an album that's not afraid to be a little bit silly, and I'm not against cheesy punchlines in hip-hop. There are loads of hip-hop albums I love that have bars like this. I like a lot of Denzel Curry and JPEG Mafia, Kanye West. Because the Internet is one of my favorite rap albums. I know not everybody likes that album. I love Because the Internet. That's like the crown jewel of cringy rap. So it's not like that's something that bothers me typically. Sadly, I just found Group Therapy to fall more into like the Big Sean camp. I did not like the execution of any of this record's humor, basically. These lines were often said with little to no charisma at all, allowing them to only ever invoke an eye roll, which was a really unfortunate thing for an album that clearly has a lot of buzzing personality to it. In the case of those other albums that are cringy, Gambino, he, in my opinion, brings a very comedic, overly corny edge to Because of the Internet that kind of sells it for me. JPEG screams them with his entire chest. Denzel, well, I don't know, I kind of groan at Denzel when he does it too. But my point overall is that I think these kind of lines, punchlines, it's more about how you present them. Danny Brown, for example, he could present the worst line ever, but he's Danny Brown, so you're gonna like it, because he's fucking mental. He has an unbelievably unique and just over-the-top delivery that it's just science. he'll sell it. So it's an awful combination to have verses that already have little to no charm or finesse to me, really, containing lines that really require some charm and finesse in order for them to land. There is not a single flow I caught on this record that really dazzled me, that felt like something exciting or new, and they weren't really delivered with that much energy most of the time, so I'm just kind of left wondering what these guys really offer as performers. I mean, they show themselves to be a real jack of all trades. This album tackles most of the hip-hop subgenres that would come to your head if I just asked you, hey, list as many hip-hop subgenres as you can right here and now. Peak has one of my favorite beats. It's like a glistening club beat that feels very ideal for a group like this, very uplifting track. I like the bass-heavy, nimble breakbeat on Hot. Sadly though, there are a lot of beats here that are just huge contributors to what I dislike about these songs, in that they are often just a very minimal and all too standard attempt at whatever sound they're kind of attempting to adopt. I felt this the strongest on Do Your Shit Boyfriend, both Help Part 1 and especially Help Part 2, Lightspeed, Trunk Poppers, and a few others as well. Just the beats on all of these tracks left me feeling a little bit hollow. They can make for a pretty effective backdrop for the group to really play around and chant some catchy stuff, especially in the case of Do Your Shit Boyfriend, which I thought did have some fun, catchy refrains and a good energy to it, but I think musically these guys could really use some more eclectic sounds to bring out their clearly eclectic tastes and personalities. They all clearly have a lot of personality, but these beats just don't, and I got tired of hearing their really basic repetitive loops very quickly, and Help Part 2, as I said, especially, is a problem here. That has got to be one of the most grating piano loops I have heard on a hip-hop instrumental in a long, long time. Not even Griselda would touch that. It is ugly. The track-to-track flow here is very solid. I'll give them kudos for managing to make all of these different musical worlds in hip-hop fit pretty comfortably on one disc. The emotional beats aren't anything I found particularly cathartic, but that is actually why I still do recommend this album. There are many tracks here like a club song, Smiles, The Closer, American Psycho as well. These tracks are more, down to earth, solemn, and personal. But yeah, American Psycho, which is the opening track, that was a pretty horrid first impression for me. Swim really sounded goofy. You decide, do the by be, and the it was completely unconvincing in its attempt to make a triumphant, resonant kickstart to the album, in my opinion, and I just thought he sounded very silly. But the song still, outside of that, felt very earnest. And the closing track almost has this kind of open mic poetry night, stream of consciousness approach to its presentation, which I quite enjoyed. I think Smiles is the only track where the group's writing really managed to move something in me. I did find the beat was a little bit melodramatic on that track, but I do like the foundation it sets for the gang's outspoken takedown of the impossible internal struggle that is reading what people want from you, what people think about you, whether or not that's even something you should care about, the mountainous pressure that then comes as a result of you just looking at yourself, looking at everyone around you, and that's nicely reflected in the closing refrain of My Smile Is Chosen choking me, which I thought was a really incredible way of simplifying and phrasing this song's central dilemma. But one of the most frequent points of comparison for this group is actually Brockhampton. And I think it's actually songs like this that really hit that home. Brockhampton, I think a lot of us that, followed Brockhampton during their, prime in 2017 with that Saturation run found some liberation in it. But many have actually since looked back and decided that a lot of that early Brockhampton music wasn't particularly good. And in the moment, it just felt really special, and it was a really cool movement, but it hasn't really stood the test of time very well. I'm not one of those people. I actually really enjoy the Saturation stuff still today. Obviously not all of it. The first one I think has really aged poorly, but 2 and 3 have still got plenty of great songs. It was a massive group of young, excited, talented people, rappers, producers, singers, just making hits. They were clearly all best buds having the time of their lives, making great songs, and it was an amazing and inspiring moment, and I think Group Therapy could be somebody else's Brockhampton moment. I did not like this album. I thought this was bad, but this is something that I would like everyone to hear. I think it's acts like Group Therapy that will continue to push rap forward and inspire generations of artists to come, which is always a really beautiful thing. Overall, for me, I thought this was not good. I do not think anyone in Group Therapy is a really compelling voice, personally, in much of anything. Club music, trap music, boom bap, pop rap, whatever style they decide to embark on. At no point did I think they were really approaching it particularly well, in my opinion. That's just me. I think this album has plenty of power to really speak to someone in the same way Brockhampton spoke to me during their prime, and I think that really meant something to me at the time. So despite my dislike for the record, I see no reason not to at least suggest that you give I Was Mature for My Age a try, as it also doesn't really take up much of your time either way. There you go. That's basically it. That's my opinion. I'm gonna give this a 4, but like a kind, encouraging 4. I may not have enjoyed this, but give it a go. I'm still definitely eager to hear what comes next from this group, regardless. And that means something.